Time for our AI, ML, Cloud, and Data panel. Well, using AI, ML, Cloud, and Data Analytics to accelerate innovation. Well, rapid technological advances in digitization and data analytics have been reshaping the business landscape, supercharging performance. At the same time, the technology itself continues to evolve, bringing new waves of advances in robotics, analytics, and AI and ML. Together, they amount to step change in technical capabilities that would have profound implications for business, for economy, and for society. Well, we're looking at talking about how AI is changing the world of cloud computing, solving uncertain and variable supply and demand in the market through data analytics. Will quantum computing change AI? How AI helps in streamlining BI by automating data analytics and delivering insights and value faster? And who powers the AI, ML, and analytical strategy? Is it the platforms, cloud vendors, or the solution providers? Well, with this and much more, it is time for me to now welcome all our panelists on the screen. First up, Miao, the Global CIO GLP, joining us. Miao has over 23 years of global experience in the IT industry with broad exposure to the oil, energy, natural resources, as well as consumer goods and healthcare business, having worked for Royal Dutch Shell for 14 years, Nestle for 5 years. Thank you so much, Ms. Song, for joining us and giving us your valuable time.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Great to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, also joining us now on screen would be Muni, Vinay, Kamishetty, the SVP, Regional Head of Data Enterprise Intelligence, Lazada, joining us. Well, Muni, Vinay has 13 plus years of experience in implementing an enterprise data culture with robust data governance, integrating the intelligence into the corporate strategy, designing and building AI center of excellence, advising companies on AI governance frameworks. With this, thank you so much, Muni, for joining us today.
Thank you. Looking forward for this wonderful session. Hello, everyone.
Now joining us on the screen would be Luis Carlos, who's the SVP Head of Infrastructure, Big Data, Group Consumer Banking and Big Data Analytics Technology, DBS Bank, joining us. Well, Luis has over 17 plus years of experience gained in diverse range of industries, including banking, telecommunications, transport, government, and a diversity of technology OEMs. Thank you so much, Luis, for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Great to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, now joining us on the screen is Richard Jones, a VP APAC, a Dataiku, joining us. Well, Richard spent 20 plus years in vendors and customers, starting in technical delivery capacity and moving into sales 10 plus years ago. He enjoys helping companies realize the value of data and its potentials. He's led and scaled multiple companies across the APAC. Thank you so much, Richard, for joining us today.
Good morning from Paris. How is everyone?
All is well, and good morning to you as well. So ladies and gentlemen, with this, it is now time for me to introduce to you the moderator of the session. We're joined now by Philippe, who's the Group Head of AI, Associate Director AIA, joining us. Well, with 90 plus mass market deployments of full stack data and AI solutions, he's somebody who's found solutions to all common challenges in this space. Amongst other, data creation from scratch, AI ethics and bias, cultural integration of AI, and deep AI enterprise architecting. Philippe, thank you so much for joining us and being a moderator today.
Thanks, Bhavana, both for the introduction as well as for picking up such an amazing team. We're really looking forward to seeing some conflicting views, and we have a full bag of exciting topics for this session. So thanks everyone for dialing in. Our promise is that this will be a very, very exciting one. It will be streaming with a lot of moonshots and great ideas that we hope you might be able to take to something that will generate a consumer benefit ultimately somewhere down the line. So with that big rooster of amazing speakers, let's dive right into it. And let's start with Luis. And Luis, if you could quickly think about how does your approach in identifying opportunities to innovate in AI and machine learning analytics, how does your approach differ from what you see from many other people? And are there any inspirations that you can currently see that come from the research sector that with your unique approach, your organization's unique approach to identifying novel opportunities, you have been able to pick up and have been able to identify as something where there might be a lot of excitement to be had in the near future?
Right, and thank you, Philip, for the opportunity. So the approach is basically what we do is that they're all influenced by specific strategies and the different business models that we offer within our corporation, right? There's not really one single strategy that would fit all, but rather multiple strategies that adapt to different business models. So when you look at our industry, which it is a bank, we're trying to make banking fun and making people bank less, right? So and the fact is that we leverage multiple opportunities to be a fully data-driven organization, and with that leverage through the power of data and implementing different artificial intelligence or AI machine learning models to adapt and apply to the several business cases that we got. Then again, this is still human led at the beginning, right? Joined by the power of data to allow us to make better decision making, right? And ultimately start applying all of these different identification of opportunities. There's especially when you have end-to-end customer facing banking, that those use cases, whether NMLP, natural language processing, understanding different languages of the region where we belong to, the interpretation of all those different languages and providing the right responses to our users and actually our customers. Also leveraging all the information to the internal for our corporation. It's not necessarily a one size fits all. So I would say, the identification of opportunities really comes down to the majority of the business cases that we're designing and deriving. And then we actually leverage a lot of the AI capabilities that we have within our data platform to provide all the innovation that we require. Some of the things that actually get us really, really excited, it's now, the conflict or basically the perfect ecosystem and crash of technologies that it's happening, right? Now, we move from a mobile phone only, mobile apps. Now we're looking at leveraging blockchain technologies with embedded AI inside to allow us to have a more distributed, processing, transactioning, and making our customers have a more ease of use of our technologies.
Thanks, Luis. Muni, obviously, Luis, he really hits the nail here in saying that there's a confluence of all these different trends that we're currently seeing, and it creates so many opportunities. And Luis already start going into, okay, what are the methods, what are the tricks that we have at our fingertips for identifying out of this wealth of opportunities, which one we really want to follow through, which one we really want to dive in. Can you talk a bit about what is your organization's unique approach to finding out which opportunities to prioritize in that exciting space?
Definitely. Thanks, Philip. One thing for certain we tried and failed is to centralize the AI implementation. Right? So what we tried to do, because being a product-based company, so we focused most of the AI implementations in and around the product enhancements, and then the features in the applications that the end users use, right? The Lazada app itself. it created the success initially, right? Obviously, that's the core and core of our business. But the problem arises when we try to expand this AI adoption to the other departments. Say, for example, risk, when it wants to identify the fraudulent customers or fraudulent buyers, so they would need an AI solution. And logistics team, when they want to optimize their warehouse and trading, they would need AI and solutions, right? This centralized team wasn't working well. So what we really went back to the drawing board 4.5 years back, and then tried was it would make more sense to create a hub and spoke model. Correct. So you good that you built your initial set of use cases, and then you build some accelerators, pretty much that can be reused across the organization, along with a good foundation of the AI platforms, right? So, but I think the success would only come if you create the spokes of it. That's one operating model that looked very interesting in our company perspective. But when it comes to the identification of the use case, here is another interesting lesson learned, right? You cannot have a stick and say that, hey, give me the use case, correct? And then nobody would be able to come up with the use case. But rather, we adopted a community-based model. So what is a community-based model? We have looked at something like your citizen data science program. So wherein we could able to create the awareness in these spokes, identify the evangelists, who could able to spread the awareness in the team, right? And then we help them try to solve some of their day-to-day business problems through these evangelists. So what happens, suddenly we have like key 4 to 5 evangelists working in the spokes with the business, identifying the opportunities. And then it all feeds up into the central team where we have a small governance committee, which has like a inbuilt prioritization methods to identify the use case and then build a roadmap of use cases, right? And that has become really successful. And then with this, again, coupled by the enablement program, we could able to translate this down to the spokes and then created a small AI teams, but by then centrally governed by this hub. This, I think, in our company worked well. Again, as the previous speaker rightly pointed out, it differs from company to company. But certainly, a product-based company like us, had a better way of handling AI with this kind of a model.
Great focus here on the last mile challenge, which recently in the relevant literature has received a lot of attention, and it seems rightfully so, as we've just heard. Richard, how would you relate with your own experience to what we've just heard from Luis and Muni? Is there anything you disagree with, or is there anything that you would take further?
Yeah, look, I'm going to first probably say I echo the sentiments and statements in that it's not uncommon that we see significant tensions across the enterprise with differing priorities and different needs. You talk about the last mile technology. We were just recently in a conversation where there is a top-down mandate to remove Excel out of the organization, and that's a significant initiative and statement. And it sounds very easy, but to try and actually remove that out of end user computing and the years and years and years and years of behavioral ingrained expectation of management, and we could call it self-service analytics in some way, shape or form, it is a really, really challenging task. And so these sorts of executive decisions and tensions exist across the enterprise in all shapes or forms. And so what we do see, and it's really heartening to also hear that the failures of centralization and then the realization of hub and spoke happen. It's not uncommon. We've seen it many times. And also we see it in correlation to the maturity curve. And I think it's important to talk about that lens of how these tensions and growth factors come to bear. And so we actually ran a report with IDC. We're on our 2nd year in a row. And an interesting factor of the APAC market specifically that highlighted a change in this maturity was one new dimension that has come in. So we have the people, the process, and the technology, and the realization of the market to adopt AI is you actually have to put one fundamental piece in the middle called data. Without the lens on data, the people, process, and technology components don't mature the journey of AI, and that realization and understanding of putting a lens to data relative to how you execute is an important growth factor. I do believe, and I throw this out there, and I'm not sure whether evolution of whether we call them hub and spokes, or now in the new way we like thinking of tribes, and a different lens on organizational design, whether the talent pool also determines the structure. And there is a significant challenge of enabling pervasive AI in an enterprise because of talents and the types of engagement to technologies. And so our lens of Dataiku is obviously to try and provide a platform that gives access for all talents to engage into AI. But that not necessarily is the way organizations execute, with the event of cloud progression and access to so many AI types of technology. And from a coding lens to a non-coding lens, you have all of these different intentions. And so how do you mobilize to the organizational design effectively? And so that would be my challenge perspective I really do believe it's at the heart of all AI success is in the talent perspective first, and then the people, process, and the data and the technologies you use can really execute. But it's I echo the sentiments of having many approaches is definitely needed to create success.
Very interesting perspective here on the ever-rising importance of data and talent becoming the fundamental of the competitive advantages in the future. And if we look at the competitive advantages, the question, of course, also arises, where exactly do we think the next breakthroughs will be, especially in respect to understanding the customer better and better, which is one of the key building blocks on our shared journey to extreme individualization and tailored services. Miao, if you would pick one single area that you say this is the area where we will see the applications that will have major breakthroughs in the near future and medium-term future in understanding the customer, understanding the needs of the market, where would you put that?
Yeah, I think probably if you think about what happened let's step back, look at what happened in the last 24 months. And all the industries, each organization has gone through very unique time. That is super important. Yet many companies actually thrived and being very successful during COVID. So why is that? I could give some examples. Some of the consumer companies, they were doing direct to consumer business, direct deliver to the consumers during COVID, because for the reason that everybody was stuck at home for quite a long time. But some of the company was extremely successful of doing that type of business. Why is that? Actually, a lot of company leverage AI technology or machine learning technology to be able to predict the need for the consumers and the need for the customers. So this is something beyond just using AI, using technology to improve efficiency internally, drive the process improvement. But this is something actually looking at what's ahead to be able to forecast the demand, to sense the demand of the customers and consumers. This is already, I think, implemented by many companies. The consequence of doing this actually optimize the whole value chain. So as a result, the whole end-to-end supply chain from demand to supply is actually optimized. Think about, the company, where you put your production, where you put your manufacturing, how you deliver. We talk about last mile delivery to the customer, but also where is the strategic location for your logistics, how you actually optimize your logistics spend, and also deliver the customer to the customers on the right time. So these are actually AI plays a key role. I also personally think this technology actually thrived during COVID in the last 24 months. The good part is it's not just the big players are doing this technology. A lot of startups who are specialized in certain solutions, for example, in demand sensing, they actually thrived during COVID as well. I think this is very healthy because in the end, we are looking for something disruptive, not just from the big technology players, but also we want to see something really innovative from some of the smaller players. So if you ask me to bet one thing, I think any solution, AI solution, being able to predict the customer demand and predict the consumer demand would definitely something be as a killer for the whole value chain.
Understanding the customer better, driven by the incentives that COVID has brought us. And an important point as well, if we think about the 3 C's that accelerate digital transformation, is the CEO, CITO, and COVID. Right? So long running joke. Hopefully we soon can go back to the 2 C's. That being said, Muni, you've got a very wide view, obviously, in the role that you are. Where would you see the coming breakthroughs that we can expect in AI, and how will it help us to better support the customers?
Sure. So again, I'll speak from an e-commerce perspective. We are seeing some interesting trends, right? We've been hearing the demand on virtual reality, augmented reality, and metaverse. Why do you think Squid Game is so popular? So because, people who could not able to succeed in the real life, so could able to come to the game and then play virtually and, hope for the success. And then that's been the psychology or sentiment of a lot of human beings. So with this, right, the adoption of the metaverses and augmented reality, virtual worlds is booming. And then we as a company are looking forward and investing in these technologies. So for example, we're thinking about opening an AI-enabled a shop in a virtual world where people can come and buy, right? So then obviously that's a target state, but what we've done recently is our parent company, Alibaba, tied up with IKEA. And then so they both worked together and created a virtual mall in the Taobao. So just like during the COVID, people cannot visit the malls, right? So basically what people have done, they've used this platform to virtually browse through the malls and then in fact even pick the items, like for example, sofa, and then with their mobile phones and place it in their living room and see if the color matches, size matches, and then could able to purchase, right? I think we're all getting into that. That's one killer adoption of AI that I foresee, and then we are working towards that at least. And the second is obviously the optimization of, or rather automation of the warehouses. So we have like 3,000 bots working in our warehouses, picking up the deliveries and then routing through the right channels and then labeling and sorting and all that. That's been fundamentally how the warehouses and then logistic fleets going to change in the future, right? We're talking about self-driving vehicles and then self-sufficient warehouses, self-sustaining and sufficient warehouses is what we're getting into. At least I can think of these 2 killer applications of AI from an e-commerce perspective.
Absolutely fascinating. Two areas brimming with excitement. But Luis, do you think that the expectations are realistically set on virtual reality, on autonomous robots and vehicles, or do you see the opportunities for the major breakthroughs being in other areas?
So that's actually quite an interesting question, if you may ask, right? Because if you look at the area of AI today and how the lay of the land is, right? Basically, every company out there that is doing any sort of exploration in AI, machine learning, or research is distributed across 3 different domains. It's supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. And and even within those particular domains, the algorithms we're still using are still limited, right? We're still using simple regressions, decision trees, support vector machines, Bayesian classifiers, clustering, principal component analysis, and the list goes on, right? But it's really some of the same over and over algorithms applied in multiple different ways, hence enhancing and optimizing what we call a narrow artificial intelligence system, which is a very smart system in one particular single domain. right? So if we like to explore more into the areas which we believe are going to be groundbreaking for the next years to come, right? We believe that we are right now in a maturity state of these narrow AI models, for example, in our industry, to make better credit decisions, help our customers take allow them for financing options, landing jobs, renting apartments. These are just a few examples. Within minutes to get approval processes for loans and cards is basically just another enhancement of a narrow AI system, right? There's multiple examples of what we're trying to do in the finance side, which is reinforce the machine learning and apply different machine learning softwares that we can provide accuracy and create also predictive models for making better decisions on fraud, credit transactions, digital wealth management, direct marketing, lending, and the list goes on, right? So I think right now we're in a process where we have not really landed or hit a knockout into what we call general AI, right? There's no such system that today that can autonomously say and actually change the way it frames and reframes. So they don't have that ability. They're getting better and better at doing some of these 3 AI domains that I mentioned in the narrow domain that they exist. And I think we are coming to a point where we're maturing and understanding better and better how these models works, so that we can actually eliminate some of the bias that some of these models have had in the past.
So I think that I'm going to have a bit of perspective on this one. We talk about the moonshot lens as well, and we see the wonders of the kind of robotic side of AI, and people do associate very much that AI is an element of like the mystical unknown and magic of creating the wonders of the world that will solve all problems. But I think fundamentally some of the just basic challenges that exist to get AI pervasive in a company are some of the biggest breakthroughs that need to be made. Being able to get approvals and deploy an AI into a production state in a seamless way with traceability, auditability, ethical boundaries and guidance, and being able to declare it's being used responsibly, still don't exist. And that, we can get a man to the moon, but we can't get an approval process for AI into a business. And so that, I think it's great having the lens of research and fundamental breakthroughs, but the basics are actually still so critical to business operations and progression. We forget about the importance of getting breakthrough there. And I think we're certainly very focused on it as an organization. And I think we will see some significant breakthroughs in the fundamentals of how do you govern and manage AI applications across the enterprise. And we're certainly hopefully going to be at the forefront of driving those into industry and helping that change happen. So yeah, I've thought I'd throw that out there, because the controversy of being able to do the magical mystical stuff versus the reality of the basics, I would say is where we need to put breakthroughs in.
One of the areas we have not discussed, which is the healthcare, actually. So I think because there are a lot of push around being more effective healthcare industry, reduction of the cost of healthcare overall. We have not talked about actually where AI can play a role in terms of healthcare, including digital health, including using AI for drug discovery, clinical study, the big data analytics, but also eventually even, there is some technology development, robotic surgery, etc. I think that's where there's going to be a big change, because there's a fundamental, again, back to Richard's point, there's a lot of regulation needs to be set up. A lot of things still need to happen, but fundamentally, this is the industry where it can bring huge benefit to human beings. It reduces the cost, improve efficiency, and I think will have some transformational impact to everybody in this area.
Phenomenal, this discussion. Essentially, reality starts to hit the dream of us moving towards general intelligence, general artificial intelligence. And obviously the price is huge, as we've just heard. Let's imagine what happens if we revolutionize healthcare. Where could that go, right? Now, another dream that has been around for quite a while is obviously quantum computing. And if we had asked questions around quantum computing even a year or two ago, I would greatly suspect that we would have less people that actually use quantum computing as part of their real world roles in our panel. And all the more fascinating it was to see that we actually have some of the leading applicants of that technology right here today. So Miao, right back to you. Where do you see quantum computing today? And do you see that it has an impact on business that we can foresee on it? And is your organization already trying out or playing with the thought of using some quantum technologies?
Yeah, I think the overall assessment is still very infancy. The current organization I work for has not really used quantum computing much because, first of all, it has to be a very solid use case. But I do think personally, this is the area where it can make tremendous difference in many industries in the long run. A give example, I think eventually it makes huge difference in the financial services because the speed of quantum computing to be able to compute and deal with the volume of data actually is going to be transformational because it drives speed of, the analytics, drives speed of decision making, drives speed of data processing. That's typically one area, but there are other areas. I mentioned healthcare. Just think about how much data healthcare produce every day, right, across the board. It's huge and humongous, and quantum computing is going to shape that area in the longer term. There are other industries as well. I mean, I would say probably manufacturing as well in the longer term. I think the problem, or as well as opportunity today, is the cost. The first one is actually coming back to the use case. I think the organization most of the organization, including us, have to be very creative around where to apply the technology to generate the business benefit. That's point one. The point two, I still think the cost versus benefit, cost is very high to apply this technology. It's not like cloud, it's not like other technology. We can adapt it very quickly. Still quite a lot of things to be done, and the investment is high in this area. Third one is the technology landscape. As of today, and that's my personal opinion, quantum computing the technology is still controlled by the large firms. So the large companies largely manage the technology. Personally, I like to see that there'll be more startup company, there'll be more small size, medium size company to develop this technology so that when the organization think about this and they have multiple choices rather than just go for one or two for quantum computing. So that would be my forecast. But again, if you ask me to make a bet on this, I do think this is the most one of the most promising technologies in the next few years.
So not only is it very promising, it might also generate some challenges, right? If suddenly we don't program our computer code on binary systems, but on systems that work in a very different way, is that yet again going to be an area where reality gets hit by some hurdles before we can come to that ultimate dream? Or what's really the scope, right? Will we have more challenges? Will we have more opportunities? Richard, what's your take on that trade-off that we might be running into on that exciting new technology?
For me, I think it comes down to some of the fundamental lens. If we look back at the evolution of migrating from on-premise systems to cloud type platforms. That evolution in and of itself is still in kind of in the middle journey and hasn't finalized. And now we layer on the lens of trying to bring in AI as a standard and pervasive capability. And now we just have to move one step further, and we bring in an entire new coding operating framework and such like. For me, it's needed, but I do fundamentally also echo Xiao's point that the cost price point is still very high. But more importantly, I think the talent catch-up component, we haven't yet got pervasive in deploying AI in technologies that are being used today. And yet we're now trying to expect the talents to even pick up new ways of working again. So for me, it comes back to the same point I made at the start. The talent pool is still small today in the environment to make AI pervasive in the enterprise. It's even smaller for trying to leverage quantum computing in the enterprise. And so that curve of maturity relative to how it can be used is still very, very, very small. That said, there are still some really, really good use cases that are being built and explored around. We have a customer that's actually using quantum computing, and they're looking at exploration and using mapping graph type data sets with the ability to get more effective in their exploration process. And that type of high heavy graphical compute need of large data sets, actually I find quantum computing can actually add value into many areas of that lens. So I think it echoes into some of the healthcare potential, that if we have larger data sets to help DNA sequencing strategy and producing of better gene pool type focused drug sets, that ability to take it to market faster with a higher accuracy in its efficacy and utilization in a better way. I think again we will see fundamental changes in the way we look at the healthcare operations. So I'll always echo based on pragmatic lens and say the fundamentals are still yet to be developed, but the moonshot strategy is never going to go away, and we need to have those perspectives trying to help drive the lens of practicality.
Yeah, I agree with Miao and Richard, right? But we need this. For example, I'll give you two scenarios, right? To model nature, we need nature. What are you talking about modeling the nature? Discovering a drug, breaking down the structure of the protein. It's pretty complicated, correct? And then there are millions and trillions of combinations in which it could happen, right? And then to simulate this and then conduct experiments, you need nature. And second, the computers, the transistors, which are fundamental parts of the computers, right, are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So I think it's already hit a size of a virus now, right? And then it's getting into a subatomic world. So meaning, if you're getting into the subatomic world, right, the current physics will not work. You need quantum physics. The world works on a quantum computing. So you need to build faster computers. The transistors that works on a subatomic level should be based on the quantum principles. So which is where I think the fundamental drive for the quantum computing came into the reality. But again, to echo Richard and Miao, we're at least 10 years away. All we have currently is some experiments, and I would say simulators. We are currently using something called hybrid computers or quantum simulators or something like quantum accelerators. So no one has a working quantum computer, right? And then to have like a laptop which is built out of a quantum computer is at least years away, 10 years, 15 years away. But yes, the use cases are pretty fantastic when we try to apply it. Even with the quantum simulators, we could able to do a POC in our organization. So at least, as like Miao said, at least this has been accessible to some of the large companies. Thankfully, we are part of Alibaba. So Alibaba has built something like your Demo Labs. Demo Labs has got its own quantum simulator, right? Built out of qubits, 11 qubits computer. And they're already using this for optimization problems. So quantum computers, again, it is not helpful to apply for anything and everything. Anything related to optimization, anything related to a factor-based problems, you can use it really well. We could able to replicate this well for our logistics fleet problem to solve the sales, traveling salesman problem, right? A classical computer, an algorithm model building and training, right? It was taking about 4.5 weeks to actually come into the deployment and development and training and all that, right? But with a kind of a portion of that, and then we could able to model it through a quantum simulator, so we could bring that to 2 to 3 days, and then we could able to, it's a practical implementation, and then we're releasing a white paper soon on top of this, right? So, meaning we've started somewhere in a very nascent and a beginning stage. And as and when more ecosystem and then hardware, softwares, and then the frameworks come into the play, innovate in an accelerated way in like next 5 to 6 years, hopefully, I think we'll all have, the workable quantum computers sitting on our laps, hopefully.
Absolutely fascinating. How these applications can change the world, we can only speculate today. Richard, really looking forward for the audience. That graph-based model that Richard was talking about is a type of AI that is much more explainable. So if you happen to work in areas where that's really important, maybe healthcare or other areas where it's really risky to not be able to explain, that breakthrough is going to be there for you. 10 years or so, we heard. Fingers crossed, maybe a little bit earlier as well. But Richard and Muni, thanks. Richard, one of the key things you also raised is it's going to get even harder to get the right talent. A few years ago, everything was just about getting the best data scientists. So it was kind of easier, even though there was a big lag. You knew, okay, we just need to get the data scientists. Now it looks like things have gotten a lot more complicated as we're more moving towards operationalizing AI. So what is the talent that organizations need to bring in place today in your eyes?
So I think, again, I'll echo the lens of the tensions that exist in the enterprise to try and make AI pervasive. And I'll put it from that lens, that the pervasive use of any type technology requires the ability for the most generalized user to the most expert user, to be able to work within the way they want to work and become effective and productive and efficient, and let's put a lens of actually enjoy their job and be happy doing what they're doing as a critical component of today's world we live in. And so for us, the lens of the data scientist is actually, how do we make data scientists more productive within the enterprise by giving access to capability and reusability of componentry that they produce to the most generalized user. And so this builds this bridge of being able to go across from an associate that may just joined, that's come out fresh out of university, to somebody who has 30 years of R&D development experience with lots of capabilities to be able to bring to the enterprise. So I think simplification of talent access to the complexity of the problem to get AI into the enterprise is really that core tension of where talents exist. So that our lens is to try and enable everybody to access AI in the way they want to use AI for the most effective and productive outcome.
For democratization of the ultimate tool. Miao, what would you say is, what are the talents we need to get in place right now? And do you have any secret tricks that our audience can use to help them overcome that severe talent shortage we have in some of the areas?
Yeah, I think this problem or opportunity very, I would say systematically. The first one is a talent pipeline. I think we need to think about from the beginning where the talents will be from. So they started typically from university, right? Look at all the technologies, the leading technologies. They're at R&D, a lot of them from the universities. I think there has to be, I would say, abundant and secure funding source invested in the future technology, because some of the talents actually missed the bar at the early stage because they were not able to secure any funding to do their research, to do the really, really bold and disruptive stuff. And then they failed, right? Because they didn't have money, then they couldn't become big. And that's one. I don't know whether this has to be solved systematically by the investors or by the industry, but I think this is something needs to happen. The second one is back to how we define the talent. To me, I think the talent need to understand the technology, but being very bold to apply the technology. At the same time, the talents need to understand the business as well, to be able to identify what are the next big thing, or what are the next big 2 or 3 things in terms of the business landscape. And this is often missing. The technology people really don't understand how to apply the technology to the business world, and the business world people don't understand the technology. I think talents, for me, should have the nice combination of understanding of both business and technology, including AI. So this has to be solved very systematically to bring us to the next level.
Very fascinating angle coming in here on what's the fairness of growing talent, right? Luis, Luis, we only have a very short time left, but do you have any secret tricks that could help our audience in helping overcome that shortage of skilled, almost superstars in AI talents that we want to find?
Yeah, so we'll give you some of the perspectives of what we'd applied, and I think it very starts with the shift of mind that we, as a finance industry, had. If you look at us, in a 29,000 employee company, we're 10,000 technologists and developers inside. And how do we reach to those massive amounts and mass scale of developers and individuals? It's because some of those barriers were broken, that we need an AI developer with knowledge in the finance industry. The fact is, we have opened up to grab talent from all across industries, no matter where they come from. And we understand that we can tailor their knowledge to what our specific outputs have to be and our ultimate cases are. Right, so we got professionals from a large variety of industries, and they are actually helping us grow, at a way faster pace than we were having before. We've also encouraged, and it's actually highly encouraging, that the conversation you can have when you hear our CEO speak versus talking to an associate at the lowest possible most junior level. We all go through the same level of understanding about AI ethics, industrialization, data analytics, and such. So there are huge programs to reinforce across the board the education of leveraging data, and also opening up for the talent development growth, regardless of where the industry they come from.
Excellent. And coming nicely back to Miao's point, that we can also spin it and say, is the shortage an opportunity for us to get more diversity, not only industry-wise, but maybe location-wise, talent type-wise, and looking beyond the typical boundaries we have? On that very nice point, we'll wrap up the discussion. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And with that, back to Bhavana and the team for the next session.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Philippe. Wonderful moderation right there. Thank you. Kudos to you as well. And thank you to all our panelists.